All right, what's up, guys? R-Truth returns at WWE Money in the Bank 2025. We got a surprise return. We thought it may be someone else, but we got a surprise return. And I'll tell you, it's not putting a lot of money on it being R-Truth because remember, less than a week ago, we thought this guy was gone from the company, released, not having his contract renewed, fired, whatever term you want to use. But then he makes a shocking surprise return in the main event tonight to help Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso defeat John Cena and Logan Paul. We'll talk all about it as you guys hop in, and we're a few minutes later than usual after the show. And I will tell you, my audio may not sound like it usually does, maybe a little muffled. But yeah, I've had all kinds of internet issues over here. So we're a little behind tonight, but we're still going to talk about it. And don't worry, the internet's getting fixed on Monday. So we will hopefully have a much better sound coming on Monday. So, all right, good to see you guys hopping in here. Kevin jumping in. As always, this is a reaction show. You guys know I just react to your thoughts and, questions, comments, all that kind of fun stuff. And we'll talk about each of the matches like we usually do. Good to see TJ in here. Yeah, Triple H showed up, huh? Yeah, he said, all right, I've heard all the backlash. I've heard all the criticism this past week and longer for WWE. And they decided to do something good here. A little goodwill for the fans. After hearing all the chants and all this other stuff, they brought him back. So Truth is back, and remember, he's not going under R-Truth now. If you look at some of the stuff out there, looks like he is going to be going under the name Ron Killings. So his actual name, and they've already put merch up on WWEshop.com. So yeah, I mean, I can pull this up for you guys right now. Actually, if you haven't seen it, they do already have some merch up for Mr. Ron Killings / R-Truth. So you can see what this looks like. So apparently, again, they're going to go all in on the idea that, yeah, this guy is this guy is going to be just going by Ron Killings moving forward. So I'm trying to find the actual thing. Here it is. So let me pull this up for you guys here on that, and you can see it right here. If you've not seen it already. Oh, there's Rollins. Hold on. Where did the Truth thing go? I just had it. There it is. So there you have it. It's right there on the screen. Ron Killings, shop now. You can see kind of some of the merch they've got up here. And yeah, so that's kind of seemingly where they're headed with this whole thing. So they're putting him up as Ron Killings. And so that's how they're going to sell this thing with him moving forward. So there you have it. Yeah, there you go. So you guys let me know what you think about R-Truth returning. There's Miss Money in the Bank, Naomi. We're going to talk about her in just a minute. But for now, you guys jump on in, give me your scores, what you think of the show. I'll try to catch your comments as we go through here. And as always, yeah, let's see what you guys have to say. We'll go ahead and address the R-Truth thing off the start because that is going to be the biggest talking point probably coming out of the show because it was something you guys know. We did the video on it. Such a hot topic this week, talking about Truth being let go. And I mentioned in that video, I said, hey, this is just a new WWE. I mean, this is a new era in TKO, and these guys are all about the numbers. And not that, the previous regime under Vince McMahon wasn't about the numbers back in the day and all that. But with this particularly, it was about, all right, what can you do for me now? What have you done for me lately? And, again, Truth is someone in his 50s. And we mentioned all the things about, you could see it from their perspective in terms of how they do business. But you also have to understand there's a fan aspect to this. And there's also a locker room aspect to this. And I don't think either one of those were very happy, as we know. So, but they decided, hey, we're going to bring him back, and we're just going to make more money out of him because we're going to give him a new name. We're going to get some more merch, and we know it's going to be a bestseller, so why not? It works out for all parties involved, right? So that's where we're at on that. So, yeah, Brandon says, Blake, man, not going to lie, Triple H told TKO, let me send the WWE Universe home happy. I mean, there was one of two ways you could do it, right? It was either going to be by having R-Truth come out, which I was not expecting, or it could have been Roman Reigns. And I think that's that one is still to come, as we know. Again, I told you, I thought there were 3 scenarios that could play out. You can cross out 2 of them now, but the other one can still play out on Monday in Phoenix, if that's the route they go, based on the winner of Money in the Bank. So, all right, let's talk about some other stuff here. We'll get back to the true stuff and all that. Shout out to member here on the channel. Yes, always appreciate you guys joining the Tribal Chiefs. You can be a member of the channel. Sometimes we do some bonus content. We might do some other bonus stuff for you guys. So I appreciate the support of the channel. and all that. But yeah, do what Brandon's doing here. Give me your scores. Give me what you think of Money in the Bank overall. We always do that at the start. Kind of want to know what you guys are thinking coming out of it. This was obviously a much more eventful show than I think probably we saw like back at Backlash or something like that. This was much more eventful. Not surprising, but yeah, Brandon's going to go Worlds Collide and Money in the Bank together 9 out of 10. I'll be honest, I've only seen a little bit of Worlds Collide to this point. Didn't get a chance to watch it all today, but I'll go back and watch that probably after this show and then tomorrow as well. So yeah, heard it was really good though. I had some people even message me and say, hey, I still think Worlds Collide's better than Money in the Bank. And I thought Money in the Bank was pretty good. So yeah, we'll see if that is the case for some more of you guys on that. But all right, so here's what we're going to do. Let's jump into the men's Money in the Bank match because I want to go ahead and get some thoughts on that because there was a lot coming out of it. Seth Rollins wins the match. It was interesting because I think one of the things heading into it, if you looked at all the sort of, betting odds out there and all this other stuff, and by the way, I'm going to star some of your comments. So you're leaving comments now. Don't worry, we always do this. I'll get back to them here in just a bit after we run through the matches because I see some interesting ones you guys have talking about something we're about to get into. And that is, of course, Rollins wins, but he did it kind of the way we thought, right? He was going to have some help from Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, and it was all about the numbers game. Now, I thought, if they were going to have a scenario where you bring back, like we said, Roman Reigns, you probably would have had CM Punk come out, Sami Zayn come out, but they could have simply just said, hey, we got this R-Truth thing in our back pocket. We don't need all that to happen tonight, too. So, and based on the reports out there, this does kind of tie into it. It looks like some of the reports I'm seeing right now is that the R-Truth thing seemingly happened within the last 48 to 72 hours. So this came together pretty quickly, it seems. So you never know if they decided to kind of alter their plans a bit, potentially, to have maybe R-Truth be the big talking point coming out of this. Maybe you do the Reigns thing on Monday. But like we said, we thought it was going to be something like this, where Rollins uses the numbers games. He's able to use that to his advantage. There were moments there I'm like, all right, LA Knight's about to win. And when you saw Jacob Fatu and JC come out, you're thinking, all right, we're going to get the big hoss fight between these two, these four hosses here with Breaker, Reed, Fatu, and JC. And then, Solo starts to climb, and then you get the big moment, right? You get the one we've all been waiting for. We've been talking about it for months now, months upon months. We're like, when is this going to happen? When is it going to be I Hate You Solo? And I'll admit, Brandon brings up here an interesting point. We got the I Hate You Solo, but I think it should have been its own segment. I probably could have envisioned that too in sort of a different sort of spot where that just kind of gets its own little thing. Now, it's still a huge moment in the match, right? Because you think Solo's about to cash in and he's about to win this thing, which if you guys didn't see it, the betting odds out there shifted dramatically from after SmackDown last night to today leading up to Money in the Bank. Seth Rollins was a huge favorite heading into SmackDown last night. And then what happened? Rollins all of a sudden just came out and beat the hell out of everybody. So, in our universe, we're thinking, that's not good for Rollins because if you beat everybody up before the PLE, that means you're not winning. That's the old Attitude Era logic. And so Solo became the favorite. And I mean, not just a little favorite. Solo became kind of seemingly somewhat of a heavy betting favorite heading into this match. And I'm thinking, are they really going to do this with Solo? Like, I get why they would try to do it if you're going to play into the Fatu thing, but I'm like, I don't know if they can make Solo the guy here. I don't know how people are going to react to that, especially when you've got a lot of positive momentum maybe towards LA Knight, who's now lost for a third straight time in Money in the Bank. You guys know I did a video on that. I don't know that that's going to help LA Knight, but it's something they could maybe use moving forward, possible heel turn, something like that. Could have a different edge maybe for him. But Rollins was the only other logical winner. I did not like the idea of El Grande winning, even though he was impressive as usual, but I didn't like that idea. So I think, Rollins winning, if this is the way you were going to do it, I feel like, I don't know, right? I feel like it's kind of a scenario where this was probably the best path to have him win if you weren't going to do the stuff in the main event, which would have made sense if you had Rollins come out, maybe try to cash in something like that. But if they were going to do the Truth thing, you didn't need all that tonight. So now you can wait until Monday and be in a position, be in a position now where it's kind of a scenario where you've got to expect Rollins to try to cash in no matter what happens on Monday night between Jey Uso and Gunther. And so, it just seemed to me that this was probably the direction they were going to head in, and especially even though we went back and forth a little bit about why maybe LA Knight needed this more, and like I said, the odds seemed to swing in Solo's favor to the point where I just was not understanding how we were going to get there with Solo winning. I just did not see that happening, because if you would have had Solo try to cash in on a world champion, I just don't think it would have went over well. You could have done the thing with Fatu with the United States title, but remember the segment they did last night on SmackDown where Fatu catches Solo saying all gas, no brains. You kind of knew it had to play out tonight, because otherwise it makes Jacob Fatu look like an idiot, right? If he just lets Solo win the Money in the Bank, well, that makes no sense, because he just saw this happen last night. So you knew Fatu was going to cost Solo. I kind of agree. I would have liked to maybe, seen that maybe in its own little segment, but this was, we talk about impact. Solo thinks he's about to move closer to getting the title back to the family, right? Not so fast. Jacob Fatu waits for the right moment, capitalizes, and now we're going to get Jacob Fatu versus Solo. You're going to kind of have the breaking off now of that group, which probably before you're getting Jacob Fatu versus JC. And so, yeah, I think that's probably where we're headed with that. But, yeah, so I think that's it. So, again, I don't have a problem with Rollins winning. I kind of mentioned that in the predictions. I just think it was the one that was so obvious that you're like, can he really do it? But it just makes the most sense because of where they're headed. And they push this championship match on Monday between Jay and Gunther, which they should. It's a WrestleMania rematch, as a huge deal, right? So I think that's something that we probably see something with Rollins coming up on Monday. So I think that's it. Yeah, and so I think that's probably where we're headed with that. All right, I'm going to see what you guys have in terms of some of the comments on that. Yeah, I think LA Knight was the one, as you guys know. And by the way, if you're just joining in, I mentioned it from the start, but probably going to be a few audio-video issues on the stream because my internet's not working the best today. There's been some issues with it, but I'm having it fixed on Monday to where we won't have these issues anymore. So, yeah, just letting you guys know ahead of time. But so LA Knight, I think it is one where I said it. I feel like if you were ever going to do it with LA Knight, now is the time. Now, the only other option I feel like at this point for him is, like, I mean, you got to turn him maybe. I don't know. I just don't know. Like, the fans are still behind him, but I'm just thinking you've seen him now come up short 3 straight times in this. And like I said, I mean, it seemed like there would be no better setting than having LA Knight win in LA, right? I mean, you could have tied everything together. I told you, Michael Cole would have been over there just absolutely losing his mind at the idea of calling LA Knight winning in Los Angeles. And so, but I think at this point, he's clearly got the stuff coming up with Aleister Black. He's had the stuff with Damian Priest, and you can still tie him into the, that kind of picture, which, I also wonder too, how long is Jacob Fatu going to hold the United States title? I feel like, yes, you probably are doing Solo versus Fatu, but at some point in the near future, I think Jacob Fatu obviously goes a little bit higher than that, but he's someone who elevates the title too. I don't think LA Knight just going back to U.S. title reign is going to be your solution. They've got to come up with something different, I think, with him now, because he has just kind of been that guy that just comes up short. The top babyface that everyone cheers, he comes up short again. And you guys know there are some people in the past, and you'll probably bring them up in the chat, that there have been people in the past who've been in that same situation, right? I'm not saying it's a Lex Luger level, but, still, I mean, there have been other guys that WWE has kind of had at that level before in the past that could never really get that one big sort of defining win, and you feel like LA Knight may be in that spot. But again, he still sells merch. The crowd's going to keep cheering him, but I told you in that video I did, I think you're going to have some people who are going to be pretty disappointed. I think eventually they're going to be like, all right, this guy just loses. He just loses big matches. So why should I be as invested in him if he just keeps losing these kind of matches? So, I'm not going to lie. After we did the video on Wednesday, I told you, in the video we did on Friday, I said, I kind of was changing my tune a bit. I'm like, I think LA Knight may be the guy here. I feel like he needs it the most, and you could see him not cash in right away, but you could see them have that big moment with him. And yeah, I think that's, maybe something that we'll look at moving forward. So, all right, let's see. I'm gonna stay on some of the stuff here you guys have asked for Money in the Bank. And again, if you want to make sure I see your comment, leave a super chat. You don't have to give a lot of money. I'm not asking you to unload lots and lots of money, but if you want to leave a super chat, I'll make sure I see it. I do get a kind of different section here on the back end where I can see all super chats. Sometimes when you're leaving comments, they all go through pretty quickly, and I can't always catch up on them. So if you want to make sure I get to it, leave a super chat. I know Javion asked earlier about this kind of ties in the Money in the Bank thing, but what's going to happen on Friday between Jacob, Solo, and JC? Yeah, I mean, clearly you're going to have a pissed off Solo. I think you're clearly going to have Solo feeding JC to Fatu before you get to the match between Solo and Jacob, which you would think that's probably a SummerSlam match, right? I mean, right now, if you look at the timing, it's early June, SummerSlam, early August. You've got Saturday night's main event. You've got Night of Champions. I would think that Jacob Fatu versus JC Mateo takes place on one of those shows. But remember, too, something else we got to tie in here. And I don't know if this applies to these two necessarily, but remember, we're doing the King of the Ring tournament now is back as well. And the winner gets a shot at a top champion, right? I think that's the way they phrased it. So the winner will get a shot at a world champion coming up at SummerSlam. So there's high stakes involved there. So could you do something where maybe, these guys meet in a tournament setting or something like that? Possibly. You don't really need it, but that's something else to think about, I think, for sure. So we'll see what happens on Friday, but certainly a lot of intrigue now because we've been waiting on that big moment. And even though we could criticize some of the ways they did it, I think that's got to happen, right? There's got to be that big match between Jacob and Solo. But here's the question, too. We'll get to it down the line. We won't get into it much now. But what happens when Solo loses to Jacob Fatu, right? What happens then? Or does Solo beat Jacob Fatu? Is he the first person to beat him? There's a lot of questions to ask once we get to that match. All right, so we'll stay with the Roman thing. And I'm going to stick to that. I'm going to stick to the idea that Roman comes back on Monday in Phoenix. But, if not, I don't know. They really laid it on thick on SmackDown, as I told you guys in the video I did late last night. I think they really laid it on so thick that you kind of have to believe that Reigns is coming back, right? Why wait any longer? Because it's the perfect opportunity, you would think, for Rollins. Why would Rollins keep waiting? That doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's going to be Gunther. It's going to be Jay. It's going to be a brutal type match. And if we assume that Jay retains and he's completely out of gas, he's exhausted after beating Gunther, then you have Rollins trying to pick the bones there, right? You bring out Breaker, you bring out Reed, then that's maybe where Punk and Zayn come into the mix, and then the person who ultimately tips it in the favor of Jay is Roman Reigns. It makes so much sense that I'm like, probably won't do it, maybe, because again, even though the Rollins thing felt obvious, I'm like, this feels pretty obvious too, but I would certainly think that that's a good possibility. That, like we said, there were 3 scenarios, and with Reigns not coming back tonight, you've got to think that there's a realistic option where he comes back on Monday, given the way they're pushing this match. Like I said, they're not just pushing this as your normal title defense, right? Because it is a WrestleMania rematch, and I think because they're pushing this so hard, and Rollins has the title. We're not dumb, right? We know that Rollins has that, Rollins has a briefcase now. We know that he has to look at the idea that this is the time. Because why wait, right? He wants the power. He wants the control. Why wait? There is no point in waiting when you have all the momentum now. You've destroyed everyone. You've won Money in the Bank. You have Breaker and Reed at your side. Why wait at this point? Cash in on Monday, and even though, again, we're all expecting it, I think if you get the payoff with Reigns returning, and I told you guys from the start, I thought the more impactful way was not for Reigns to screw Rollins out of winning it. I think it's screwing Rollins out of winning the title, not the briefcase. Winning the title, to me, is the most impactful. So we'll see if they do that, but lots of fun ways you can do it with that. Shout out to Robert, who's in here all the time on the reaction stuff. When we do these live, I know I don't do as much live stuff. Internet probably has been one of the biggest issues. But, yeah, shout out to Robert, always in here. Happy the truth is back. And, yeah, we kind of talked about that idea. And we can tie that into talking more about truth. We did go into the men's Money in the Bank match, but we can kind of tie that into the main event because, it is one where Cody and Jay winning. I just thought, again, Cody pinning Cena was the most logical approach because you're now setting up the big match. And we knew, even at WrestleMania, you knew we were always going to get back to a rematch, even going into that one. No matter who won, you're like, we're always going to get back to a rematch between Cody and Cena. After Cena won, it made it obvious. Now, there was no Travis Scott tonight. If you're tuning in and you didn't watch the show, I hate to reveal that news to you, but there was no Travis Scott on the show. Fingers crossed that maybe he'll return at SummerSlam. But he was not on this show. And so, yeah, I think, it is one where the way they did it, by having Cody pin Cena, clearly you want to now lead us in the direction of the big return match. I know I saw some people even thinking they might do that at Night of Champions, but I can't see that now with the way they're doing the tournament stuff. You would think the tournament finals are really going to be the headline stuff at Night of Champions later this month. That was 3 weeks away. Is that right? Yeah, I think that's something that probably sets up that way. And so, from that perspective, I think you're certainly looking at it and feeling like, okay, Cody Cena continues on. I don't know where Logan Paul goes from here. Jay, we know, has a much bigger match coming up, and they're certainly, the way they ended the show tonight, Jay was the last person we saw in the closing visual, the closing shot of Money in the Bank, was Jay kind of holding the ribs, right, as he's walking down the aisle, heading to the back. That's the final visual we saw. And so they want that for a reason, because they want you to know going into that match with Gunther, Jay is not at 100%. And so that puts him in a position where, he's very vulnerable now. And I think that's going to be the biggest talking point going into Monday's show is, can Jay really defeat Gunther despite, being pretty exhausted, not 100% and all this other stuff? That's the big question. So, yeah, I think that's, again, I have no problem with the way the main event played out. And I think that's exactly how you do it. It gets you everywhere you need to be. If you weren't going to do the Rollins cash-in tonight, and you had the R-Truth thing, like I said, kind of in your back pocket, the big surprise, makes perfect sense. Because then you get the best of things after Money in the Bank, because you get Truth coming back, / Ron Killings, and then you get the best of everything on Monday coming out of it to kind of kickstart your road to SummerSlam, but kind of also kickstarting, 2 more big shows before that, Night of Champions, and Saturday night's main event. So, yeah, there you go. All right, you guys are weighing in as we stay on this Money in the Bank ladder match, because it does tie into the tag team match, and just kind of, going through both of those at the same time, because they do kind of tie into each other. Brandon says, in the match with no contest between Jay and Gunther, with all the interference, then Roman should basically piss Rollins off, and you get Seth versus Roman at SummerSlam, then Mania for the belt. Yeah, I do think, as we said, the 2-night SummerSlam this year, you've got to think Cody versus Cena is the main event of one of those nights, Roman versus Seth being the main event of the other. To me, it just seems like, was kind of a no-brainer coming out of WrestleMania. And I said, I think the other kind of big match from this story could certainly be, the idea that you do Punk versus Breaker. I think that would be a good one to do. We don't know what's going to happen with Sami Zayn. What's that mean for Jey Uso, right? Like, there's lots of ways still you can go. But I think those are your 2 headlining matches based on where we're headed. Cody Cena and Roman and Seth. So, we'll see. All right, let's see what else we've got here from you guys. We're going to kind of move on into some other stuff, and then at the end, we'll do what we usually do. Just be complete, open it up to you. We'll talk whatever you want to talk coming out of it. But let's quickly touch on the women's Money in the Bank ladder match. I know you guys had some comments on what you thought, predictions on who you thought was going to win the match. And yes, Naomi, who we said at the start, she is Miss Money in the Bank. And if you watch the prediction video, I was pretty sold on that one. I thought that she was the best choice, because if you went through all the other options, I said Rhea didn't need it. I thought Stephanie Vaquer, she's the kind of person that absolutely you would want winning one of these matches to kind of keep the momentum going in what has been an all-timer type year for her in her first year in WWE. But she's also someone that her having the briefcase with the presentation and everything, I'm just like, it didn't really make a lot of sense. She's just kind of this badass who goes out and does whatever she wants and beats the hell out of anybody with just her wrestling prowess. She doesn't need this briefcase. And we mentioned Giulia. She's certainly headed towards something with Zelina Vega. That continued on SmackDown on Friday. I think Giulia is probably the person who eventually takes that belt from Zelina. Makes a lot of sense. Roxanne Perez, I thought was interesting, because you could have tied that into the whole stuff with Judgment Day and Liv and all that. I was, kind of intrigued by that idea. Alexa Bliss, also thought was intriguing. She was kind of the wild card to me. But really, when it came down to it, Naomi was the one that everything pointed towards to say, if there's someone who's going to get the most out of this briefcase, Naomi was the only choice. Because now, like I said, you've got this stuff where you've got someone who is playing the character of just being unhinged, right? And you also tie in the idea, before we even get to her cashing in, I also said I'm just as intrigued by the idea that Naomi doesn't cash in successfully. Because then you have someone who's already just completely out there right now, given everything that's happened. She's lost her friend in Bianca Belair, all the turmoil and the emotional stuff that she's been through with all this stuff with Jade and everything. Imagine her being the first woman to unsuccessfully cash in the Women's Money in the Bank briefcase and what that would do to Naomi, right? And the level that she could then go to. You talk about how she's taking it to another notch now. Proceed with caution. Well, they need a lot more tape if she were to unsuccessfully cash in this time. Not saying I'm rooting for that, but I'm just saying I could see that being an option. But yeah, I think there's clearly now something where we said the way you're going to tie all of this in is that you have potentially a situation where Naomi has to tie this into something with Jade or Bianca. And I think Brandon, brings up another good point here. Could it be a possibility where, hey, maybe Jade is the one who takes the title and then Naomi cashes in on Jade and that just keeps this thing going, right? And then maybe from there, I'm going to add on to Brandon's fantasy booking here. Let's say that happens, Jade wins it back, and then eventually do we get the stuff maybe next year at WrestleMania 42, or maybe it is Bianca versus Jade. We said we thought that could be a possibility this year until the Jade injury, and they kind of really delayed this thing a bit. But you've got to think next year, Bianca versus Jade has to be considered one of your top matches available going into that. And I think with the way the story kind of progresses, you've still got a long time before we get there, right? And by the way, too, if you didn't see it, not really huge shock at this point. You guys know. But they did officially announce WrestleMania 42 for Las Vegas next year, not New Orleans, which The Rock came back and gave us a great speech about how The Rock was going to bring WrestleMania to New Orleans. Well, he might one day again, but he's not doing it next year because it's going to be in Las Vegas. I think that's, not surprising. Again, it's TKO. Money is at play here. They want to replicate the success they did financially from this past year. But I could absolutely see Jade versus Bianca as one of your main events maybe next year. It's a lot, I know, I get it, but I could absolutely see that being something that happens. And so, yeah, I think Naomi was the right winner. I think she gets the most out of this. And everything else coming out of it, I think, what's Rhea's path back to a championship? I think that's a good question. Io Sky, I will say, I feel like lately Io has kind of felt like a little bit of an afterthought. Which, that was the story going into WrestleMania 41. Of course, we remember that, where you just kind of had Bianca and Rhea kind of shoving Io, and then ultimately Io is the one who triumphs, and maybe that's the way they're playing it, right? Like she's always kind of the underdog, even though she's the champion. But I'm curious to see kind of where they go next with her. They kind of played up the stuff with Liv this past week on Raw. That's a potential option. But, Naomi potentially having some sort of cash-in opportunity on Tiffany Stratton, or maybe surprises, and it's Io Sky. I can't see that one maybe as much because I think you probably want to keep things with Bianca and Jade on the same brand. But Naomi winning I think was the right move. I thought she was the best option. So, all right, let's see what else do we have here with this. I know you guys are giving me some comments. I'm going to pull these up. We always do that. I always say when we do this, the press conference. I don't ever get the good stuff from the press conference. So let's see what Triple H had to say. Okay. I love Triple H in these press conferences. He gives us some good stuff. So, and by good I mean always a talking point. So I know it was brought up here by Frederick that Triple H said it was scripted with R-Truth. So I'm going to read the exact quote that I'm seeing here on what Triple H had to say about R-Truth. Before I do that, I'm going to give you Cody's thing. So Cody said I guess this is the post show they did where they're on the stage with the the panel and Big E and all them. But Cody said, quote, "You guys wanted R-Truth, and it's always our job, everybody here, Triple H, Nick Khan, to give you what you want. So thank you guys for letting us know. Thank you." End quote. That's what Cody said. Here's what Triple H said. So, here we go. Triple H said on R-Truth's return, quote, "You enjoying the show? All part of the show." That's what he said. Now, let me tell you, I appreciate Triple H trying to really spin it that way. I am not as sold. Now, I know some of you guys are again, and that's fine. You may not agree with me on that, and we don't always have to agree on everything. But I think it's a great way. If I'm Triple H, I'm having the same answer, by the way, too. I'm going to say the same thing. But I don't think they can sort of convince us that. Even there's a report out there, actually, a few minutes ago, I'm seeing now. R-Truth was actively, making contract deals were potentially in place with other companies and or like, you know, I think like it was actively in place. So like he was headed elsewhere, and they decided to make the call. I'm not blaming them at all, right? I think I'm glad they're bringing it back. It'll be interesting to see what they do here. But I think, yeah, this is definitely something where there's a lot more to it, as we know. I think it's probably the easiest way to put it. But again, I don't have a problem with Triple H doing it this way because I think everyone knows how this played out, and I think now we just see what they do moving forward because it is kind of a fresh idea now to do the Ron Killings thing. And maybe you get kind of, I know someone said earlier, kind of a different edge to R-Truth. He's not the comedy character anymore, right? He's a different guy who now feels like he's been screwed over. And so you have that version of Ron Killings come out. I think that would be an exciting thing to see how he reacts now. I think that's kind of cool. So hopefully they make something out of this because if you're going to do it this way, make something out of it, right? Don't just bring it back for this one-time thing. You spear Cena and that's it. Like, actually get something out of it. Like, don't just kind of, do it this way. We're like, all right, hey, we're going to bring him back because you guys, weren't happy. And then we're just going to do the same thing at some point. He's released 6 months from now. Like, actually make this something. That's it. I mean, R-Truth doesn't have to wrestle every night. He doesn't have to be in the main event. He can simply be an ambassador for the company. Go out and let him do radio. Just let him promote anything. Not that WWE needs this stuff anymore. They did this a lot more back in the 90s and early 2000s, but they make so much money now. They don't need all this. But come on, this is a guy just like, a Titus O'Neil or someone like that. Like, he can do all this stuff. So, yeah. Good point, JV. It's a good callback here. Like, go back to, 2012, where it's a little more serious truth. And, you're definitely not going to make him a heel. That's not going to happen, like you say. I mean, it's certainly not even a possibility at this point. But go back, kind of bring back some of those things. And like I said, I mean, now you've got kind of we always talk about, you guys know I get deep in the weeds on this stuff, but I love this, where it's like, hey, the motivations of these guys. Just give me a reason why some of these guys are on the screen, right? I know they're great wrestlers, but give me a reason why they're there. Just give me a reason why they want to achieve what they want to achieve. It's just basic story stuff. That's all I want. I don't need anything complicated. And so Truth has every reason to come out now and be like, hey, you guys screwed me over. I'm here to prove that, you were sitting there writing me off, and I know I'm 50-something years old, but I'm going to come back and prove you wrong. Great. That's all I need. That's perfectly fine with me. So I think WWE will do something with this. It's the TKO era. You never say never about anything, and there's no guarantees. But, yeah. So there you have it. Something else I'm seeing coming out, Triple H says. Here it is, a quote from the WrestleOps account. Triple H says there's a lot of exciting things coming up over the next year or two from a lot of different sources, many of which we wouldn't expect them to go down said road. There was a mouthful. Maybe there's going to be more ladder sponsors. We got our first ever ladder sponsor tonight. Fireball Whiskey. Sponsored a ladder. Everything's going to be sponsored. Dude Wipes. I saw all the jokes about Dude Wipes. Dude Wipes will be sponsoring something soon. So, there you go. All right. Let's get to the Women's Intercontinental Championship back. Michael, I see your question. I'm going to get back to it here shortly. I'm going to quickly share my thoughts on the two Intercontinental Championship matches there. I just forgot that we had the Dominik Octagon Jr. one. But, yeah, so that came out of the Worlds Collide show where you had Dominik playing up his heel stuff. They bring in Octagon Jr., who's, again, really good if you've seen any of his stuff in AAA, Triple A, however you want to say it. But, yeah, I think Dominik winning in a pretty short match was not a surprise. They clearly wanted to add a fifth match on the card. You give one of the AAA talents an opportunity to be there, and that's that. So multiple people working double time here on a Saturday in Los Angeles. You had Octagon Jr. working double. You had Stephanie Vaquer working double. Chad Gable, I don't know if he worked double or not. I don't know if he was in that ladder match. We know Grande Americano was, but yeah. So I think clearly something where Dominik winning, just a match I think you want to add to the card to add in kind of the history. Of course, Rey Mysterio came out, had a nice little speech to start the show. Again, I didn't get to see the full Worlds Collide show, but I saw a little bit of it. I actually do that for members. If you want to be a member, hit that join button. I actually do a little quick reaction for members tomorrow. Talking about that. So, all right, the Women's Intercontinental Championship match. But I think you could make the argument up until the men's ladder match. I think was the match of the show. I think they did a great job. Becky Lynch, Lyra Valkyria. Becky wins the title. No surprise there, I think. I was maybe a little more surprised that the way they did the aftermath, where Lyra has to raise her hand a couple times, and Becky just keeps egging it on, and then Lyra puts the belt around her waist and then ultimately snaps. I thought that was an option. Also thought Bayley may come back here. Have Bayley come back. I feel like that's probably your next. Well, I say that. I'm like, well, they're probably going to go back to Valkyria and Becky, but you've got to think Bayley's coming back soon to kind of add her back into the mix here, and maybe a Bayley-Becky match. Potentially that's a SummerSlam match. That feels like a SummerSlam match to me. So that could be something where we see that play out. But I thought that, the matches between these two have been really good. And I think Lyra Valkyria has kind of come out of her shell a bit in terms of the promo stuff and all that. She's gotten the wet treatment from fans, but she just keeps going, and that's okay. So, I really, really enjoy that match. I would say if you go back, overall, I thought it was a pretty good card in terms of, like, every match to me served its purpose. Again, the Dominik match is pretty short, but I know why they did it. I didn't really think there was anything bad on the show. I think you clearly have something. And look, Ryan's going to bring up an option here where you have Lyra win it back maybe at Night of Champions. They go again. And then maybe Bayley and Lyra is something that takes place. So you could kind of do it multiple ways. And I thought coming out of this, eventually getting to a Lyra heel turn could be something that could be valuable. So if you want to do that with Bayley too, at some point in the future, I could see that happening for sure. So Becky winning, though, seemed like the way they would go, given the stipulation. So good match, and definitely one of the best matches of the night, I thought. So, all right, tying into the women's stuff here. So I've given you thoughts on all the matches. Let's just get back to what you guys want to talk about. That's what we do here. If you're just jumping in for the first time, subscribe, like, all that good stuff you hear from everyone else. Support the channel. Like I said, if the audio is not great, I promise it's not always like this, but internet's been a little bit funny tonight. So, all right, let's get to a question here from Michael. I know he asked it a minute ago. I know you guys are talking about it in the chat, but I think we're going to see Rhea Ripley versus Roxanne Perez or Rhea versus Stephanie at SummerSlam. Good question. No, Brandon weighed in saying that he's going to go with Liv versus Roxanne as a possibility. I think it is one where you kind of look at the way, we're going to see this play out. And, again, Rhea's kind of an interesting spot coming out of this, right? Because you can't go back to Rhea and Liv. You just can't do it right now. You can't really go back to Rhea and Io. That's not really an option. So you would think the best of the group right now has to be kind of a scenario where you sort of put Rhea in a position where now she is facing kind of the up-and-comers here, right, in Roxanne and Stephanie Vaquer. I think the Stephanie match, to me, is probably the most intriguing, because I'm like, if you do Rhea and Roxanne, you're just back to Rhea and Judgment Day again, right? And I just don't know if that's the direction you want to go. To me, it's more likely, okay, when is the Liv Roxanne thing going to happen? And could that happen as quickly as SummerSlam? And so I feel like, for me, I'd like to much more see Rhea and Stephanie, because think about that kind of setup, right? Rhea's kind of been the it girl for WWE for a while now. I mean, she's been clearly the top star, pushed as such and all this, but what happens if Stephanie Vaquer comes in and beats Rhea Ripley in a one-on-one match or something at SummerSlam? Now that would immediately, like I said, kind of catapult Vaquer into a spot where it's clearly they're pushing her to be one of the next top stars. You guys know I did the video on that too this past week. I think that I'd much rather see Rhea Ripley versus Stephanie Vaquer, because I don't want Rhea attached to Judgment Day right now. I just don't. I think I'm kind of done with it. So, to me, I'm more intrigued by that idea. And I'm trying to think, is there anyone else I'm forgetting on Raw right now that would kind of factor in with Rhea? Other than that, I mean, those are your heels. Like Liv and Roxanne are kind of your top heels right now, right? So it would kind of be a babyface versus babyface match, but they did kind of give you that presentation. You guys know I always talk about the camera shots they get. They gave us one tonight with Rhea and Stephanie. So I'm thinking it's probably not for just any old reason, right? They probably have something in mind with that. So I could see that happening for sure. So, yeah. All right. Let's see what else we got. Javion brought up, could we see the possibility of the triple threat? I'm going to assume you're thinking, I don't know if you're meaning that for Rhea, Roxanne, and Vaquer, or if you're meaning the Bayley, Becky, Lyra. I think that's what you meant. But, I think that's certainly possible. So, okay. Comics and Sneakers here are going to weigh in on the LA Knight stuff. says, I can't see LA Knight being a major player. Forced push for him to be Stone Cold 2.0. And I think that has been the pushback on LA Knight from some people. You know, we said earlier, he was kind of in a spot where you have to give this guy a big win if he's ever going to get there. And he just hasn't gotten that just signature win yet to that top level. And I thought this could be an opportunity to put him one step closer, right? If he's Mr. Money in the Bank, then you got to assume he's going to cash in. And so, yeah, like I do feel like he's in a spot now where they've never really gone all the way with him. And they've had every opportunity when you think about it, right? I mean, right now is not really the height of what LA Knight has been. I would think that was what you guys could probably tell me better. Was that probably late 2023? I mean, even last year, he was pretty hot last year. But, you know, I'm thinking like maybe just the peak LA Knight movement, I guess you could say. Yeah, we're not in that right now. We've kind of, you know, dipped a little bit. Now, I'm not saying it's a lot because, again, he's still one of the more over guys out there in terms of his entrances and the way the pops he gets and all that. But what does this do to him, right? If, you know, he loses another big match, do you have a little bit of that fan support dwindle even more? And I said that was one of my concerns if he did not win this match. And he didn't. And so I don't know that you may be right in terms of I just don't think they see him at that top level. He's going to stay kind of in that United States picture unless I think the only way maybe now that you do it is, and I say that, but even when I go to say it, I hesitate a little bit because I'm like, does a heel turn really do good for LA Knight? When you take away the strongest part, which to me is the incredible delivery on the promos, the great reaction from the fans on his entrance. And I said, I don't think it's that much different than Jey Uso. But they went all the way with Jey. They've not done it with LA Knight, and he's only getting older, right? So it's an interesting thought, for sure. All right. So let's see what else we've got here from you guys. Get back to the comments here. And again, appreciate you, as always, joining in. We got 150 plus of you watching here from multiple locations. So I appreciate you supporting the channel here tonight as we do talk about Money in the Bank 2025. Javion says, what about the Tongans returning? Yeah, we still got to get Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa. We got to get those guys back at some point. You think Tonga Loa is going to bring back the eye patch? I would love to see that guy just come back with the eye patch. But yeah, you've got to factor them in somewhere. And, you know, who do they side with, right? Ryan says he thinks they should side with Jacob Fatu. And to me, you have some wild card elements here. Because, yes, who are they going to side with? Remember Hikuleo, who I feel like has been signed for 10 years now, still not made an appearance. I feel like he could be kind of, you know, more of an option for him to bring in and back up Solo, potentially, if they want to go that route. So you could have 3 on that side, have the Tongans join Jacob Fatu, then you're back to 3-on-3, little Bloodline Civil War part, whatever. That could be something that happens. So yeah, I kind of like that idea with that. So, all right, Corey is going to weigh in and says, hate to say it, but I think Logan Paul will be John Cena's last match. Here's what I think, Corey. I think the way they did this tonight, they pushed again, and you know we brought up the tension that clearly they went to very quickly. Not on this week's SmackDown, but the SmackDown before. They quickly went to the tension between John Cena and Logan Paul, and I get why they're doing it, right? Two guys, big egos. They can't coexist, and tonight you kind of saw that. You know, a little shoving match. They got into a heated argument that led to Jey making the hot tag to Cody, and now I think they're clearly setting up a John Cena versus Logan Paul match when they did the initial tease that these two were going to break up, which they've had one match and they're probably done for. Could they rush that and do Night of Champions? Because they also, on this show tonight, made it very clear they were heavily promoting the idea that this is John Cena's last run in Saudi Arabia, right? So I think, based on that, you want to have a big opponent for John Cena. And I know that people initially were like, well, you do Cena versus Jey because they're the two champions. But I don't know if that's what you want to do here. That hasn't always been the theme for Night of Champions, right? That's been the theme for something else. But I don't know if that's always been the theme of Night of Champions. So I think you probably do Cena versus Logan Paul there. To me, makes the most sense. Or you have a second option, which is to do Cena versus Logan Paul on Saturday night's main event coming up a month from now, which could be a pretty big show for a couple reasons. One, we know that AEW is running all in that weekend, and WWE's already loaded up with Saturday night's main event, Great American Bash, and the Evolution PLE for the all-women's show. But also, it seems like the most likely spot for Goldberg's retirement match. And, Goldberg did say the other day that he's had a few setbacks injury-wise, so I don't know if that's going to play into it. But he said he knows the date for his retirement match, and that could play out, which we haven't mentioned it much. But look at that as another possibility. We mentioned the Roman Reigns stuff and all that. Maybe you hold the Reigns stuff off even longer. Maybe it's Goldberg who comes back on Monday in Phoenix. And it's Goldberg is the one who somehow plays a role to set that match up, which is going to be a month from now. They like to get this stuff going early. And so, don't be surprised if maybe they hold the Reigns thing off longer, maybe. And, whenever Seth decides to cash in, Roman Reigns will be there. He will pull up a chair and he will be for that, right? But if they decide to hold that off, then I think Goldberg could be there. And so, I think doing Cena and Logan Paul at Night of Champions, it seems likely because you have to do a Cena match there based on the promotion already. And if you're doing the tournament's the big thing, right? The winner of the King and Queen of the Ring tournaments. So I think Cena versus Logan Paul is your big headlining match. And maybe I'm wrong, though. Maybe they hold it off to Saturday night's main event. That's a long time, though. Because, you've already pretty much broken these guys up based on what happened tonight. So can you really wait another month? Do we really need a month, more than a month, of Cena and Logan Paul promos at each other? I don't know if I like that idea. I think maybe getting to that sooner rather than later is a good idea. I still say, and this goes back to Corey's comment here, I still say it's got to be Punk. I feel like Punk is the most logical choice at this point for Cena's last opponent. If you really think about it, to me, I think Cena and Punk is probably one of the best sort of rivalries in WWE history. And I think it's funny to say that. They had some good matches, great matches, but I don't think you can, for you guys who were watching back then, you just cannot underestimate the impact of that Money in the Bank 2011 show in Chicago where Punk wins. That to me is one of the most memorable moments in WWE history. The follow-up was one of the most disappointing things I think I've ever experienced as a WWE fan. The follow-up was terrible to the CM Punk winning in Chicago. They did the whole thing where, what was it? I think Rey Mysterio and John Cena met in the tournament to crown a new champion or whatever. And then Punk comes back, and then they get to matches where it's Punk and Triple H, Punk and Kevin Nash, and all this. And, it just, at the time, brutal. But when I think back, if you're going to wrap this up for Cena, and you want to do it in the way where potentially it is Cena doing this in Boston as his last match, I'm like, what a great reversal of having Cena against Punk in Chicago that many years ago, having Cena versus Punk in Boston to finish it off. I just think it's the one to me that makes the most sense. And maybe that's where, title or no title, it's kind of, that's where you finish things off for John Cena. Or maybe it's a third match with Cody. Maybe Cena wins again at SummerSlam. Something happens to keep evolving him back to the good side. And you finish off where Cody regains the title against Cena. I don't really know that there's another option, unless there's just a wild card out there. A Gunther. But to me, a Gunther would have been an option in a parallel universe where Cena never turned heel. Drew McIntyre, to me, could have been the same way. But right now, I feel like it's got to be Punk or Cody. And if we assume Cody's the guy at SummerSlam, then, maybe you do number 3, or maybe you do Javion's option here. Thrice in a lifetime. Rock and Cena one more time. Now that would require The Rock to actually come back, follow through on a storyline, and be there for the match. That would be a requirement that I'm not sure I'm 100% sure about right now. So, there you go. Brandon wants the Goldberg match at Great American Bash in Atlanta. Yeah. Ryan wants to know, now that Money in the Bank is in the books, who do you have as the King and Queen of the Ring? Great question. Now, I will say it's kind of interesting these days that we're doing the multi-man, multi-woman matches in the first round. Because I think Adam Pearce and Nick Aldis said, on SmackDown? 4-way matches to lead to the semifinals. So you're going to have fatal 4-ways, 4 fatal 4-ways to lead to that. So I'm like, there's 16 competitors. There's lots of possibilities. But the way they phrased it, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong here, but the way they phrased it was not that complicated, but I also had to rewind it a little bit to be like, all right, I'll make sure I heard this right. The winner gets a shot at the top champion of their brand. Is that what the way Nick Aldis said it, I think? The top champion of their brand, which is basically the top champion of your brand. Okay, that's either the World Heavyweight title or the Undisputed WWE title, right? And so I guess the question then becomes, and hear me out for a second. I'm like, if you're going to do Cody versus Cena, there's no reason Cody needs to win the King of the Ring because he already has another match against Cena lined up because, well, right? I mean, he just pinned him, so he doesn't need to win it. So that, to me, takes Cena off the board as the potential champion. Therefore, you would then think that if you're narrowing it down, the winner goes on to face Jay, Gunther, Rollins, whoever the champion is, right? So I'm like, to me, that narrows it down pretty well. And when I think about this, I would say my early favorite for the King of the Ring would be Sami Zayn. Because I feel like that opens up the most intrigue if Sami is your winner. Now, I said, however long ago, 2 weeks ago or something, when they started teasing the stuff even more with Sami and where they headed with this, I said I could certainly look at it where it's like, okay, Sami could win the Rumble next year. I could see that playing out that way. That's a long time, and there are so many twists and turns before we get to next year's WrestleMania. It's hard to really look that far ahead and be like, all right, Sami's your obvious winner for the Royal Rumble, which, again, is going to take place in Saudi Arabia. Now, we're kind of tying that in with both of these shows. I'm like, Sami triumphing in Saudi Arabia on one of these shows seems likely. And I'm thinking that Sami would be a great choice to be the King of the Ring right now. But I don't know the bracket, right? We don't know who's participating, so it makes it kind of tough. Now, you would think that like a Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed will be in this thing. Rollins doesn't need to be in it because, well, he's Mr. Money in the Bank. But I'm thinking right now, if the winner is going to go on to challenge the Raw champion, which, again, no matter who it is, whether it's Sami, whether it's Gunther, whether it's Rollins, Jay, Sami has history with all of them. So I'm thinking, to me, that's probably the most logical choice right now. Without knowing the bracket, I'm just thinking there's so many ways you could do this with Sami. Because who would be the other best options for the King of the Ring, if you really think about it? Like I said, I'm going to stick to my idea that I think Breaker is set for bigger things at SummerSlam where, he is someone who could have a match, one-on-one match maybe with Punk or something like that. And so, I mean, could you do Punk as the winner? I don't know if that happens either. I guess it's possible, but I think Sami is my early leader on that. Karrion Kross. I like this. Javion says, hey, how about this? There you go. See a Sami heel turn coming with Karrion Kross on his side. You got to get Karrion Kross into this mix somewhere. Could he be in this tournament maybe? I don't know. Don't think he's winning, but yeah, I know. I'm with you on this one, Ryan. That's why I'm kind of talking through this because I'm like, Sami winning the Rumble would make a lot more sense too. And so it's just such a long way away that I'm like, there's so many storylines we got to get through before we get to that. And the Sami thing, I feel like, has already escalated to a pretty high point to where maybe, hear me out, Sami winning the King of the Ring and then going on and potentially losing the championship opportunity at SummerSlam is the thing that kind of turns him in the wrong direction maybe. But then I'm like, well, I say that, but he's going to go to the Royal Rumble. He's going to get cheered next year, at the Rumble. So if he wins, I don't know. I'm just telling you, I don't know. Until we see the bracket, I'm going to go with Sami. And I have no idea if he's even in the thing. So I like Sami as an option. Or you could, bring somebody back. Drew McIntyre comes back. I think Drew should be in a world title type picture. But like I said, I feel like it's so obvious we're heading back to Cody and Cena at SummerSlam that the winner has to come on the Raw side. And if that's the case, then I don't know if there's a better option than Sami Zayn right now. So we'll see. All right. Go to John's comment here saying that John says he sees Seth cashing in on Monday night. Both will be dog tired. Yeah, I think that's the whole story here is that Jay and Gunther, Jay more so than Gunther, is just, he's out of gas. He's not Jacob Fatu. All gas, no brakes. Jay's going to have to put on the brakes a little bit in that match on Raw. So Seth cash-in opportunity seems likely. Just a matter of does Roman Reigns come out to thwart him? Is it CM Punk, Sami Zayn? A lot of ways to do it. So something big, though. You got to feel like it's going down on Monday on Raw. All right. Michael says, would you want to see Sami versus Jay? Absolutely. And I think even if you did it initially, it's just like, hey, these are two friends, right? and they both have the same goal. Jay achieved his goal. Sami wants to achieve his goal now. And then you don't have to turn heel for Sami to have the match with Jay. You can do the match initially, and then you can also do something there that eventually down the road, however long that is, leads to Sami being like, all right, I can't get it done this way. I've got to listen to Karrion Kross, the devil, on my shoulder. One way to do it. So, Ryan says, you think it's going to be Sami and Jay at WrestleMania? Maybe the Seth thing, maybe just hold this thing off for a while. Could that happen? That's possible. They made it very clear on commentary. They stick to the rules. This thing can be cashed in for up to a year. Although I don't know. We'll see. There was a report out there that Triple H was not a big fan of Money in the Bank. So I'm like, I feel like with one of these, he wants to get it out of the way early, where they don't have two Money in the Banks running around. And I think the Naomi one needs to last a little bit longer. Yeah, I think so. But we'll see. Yeah, I don't think Drew's coming back yet either. It sounds like from the talks of it, Drew's going to be taking some time off for a bit. So if that's the case, probably not going to throw Drew into there. I like the idea of, let's say Cody wins back the title at some point. I think Drew being the guy maybe to even take the title from Cody down the line is not a bad option. But we'll see. All right. Brandon says, sorry, LA Knight fans, we overlooked the Sami story. Yes, Sami wins King of the Ring and fights Jay at SummerSlam. All right, let's just do some quick fantasy booking here. This is what we do, right? Let's just say, here are your top matches for SummerSlam. Let's play the what if game. Cody versus Cena, the rematch. Roman versus Seth. Punk versus Breaker. I'm going to stick with that one. I don't know why. That one's just stuck in my head. Sami versus Jay. I mean, what are the other ones we said that we think are going to happen at SummerSlam? Could you do Becky versus Bayley? That's another big one. Or somehow Lyra's tied into it. You could do Rhea versus Stephanie Vaquer. I'm like, it's a 2-night SummerSlam. That's a loaded lineup of matches, if that's the route you go. And you've still got big matches in there for some of these people we haven't even mentioned, right? So I think, yeah. I mean, it is. Remember, we cannot underestimate the idea that they're going to load up this 2-night SummerSlam. This isn't WrestleMania. This is a 2-night SummerSlam, right? Now, they've already sold a lot of tickets, but they're going to treat this like a WrestleMania because it is 2 nights, and this is the first time they've ever tried this. If they want to prove that this can be sustainable moving forward, they've got to hit. Like, this has got to be a home run for this 2-night SummerSlam. And so they're going to go all in, I think, with the matchups. So it wouldn't surprise me if that is an idea where you get to that. And so, I mean, that's a pretty compelling top-tier lineup of matches. But, I think that's it. So I like it. All right, see what else we got here. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Roman costs Seth. And, yeah, like Ryan says, I think, look, if Seth tries to cash in, we know what's coming. I just don't think it's going to be a successful cash-in. Because I'm still going to go with the theory that, to me, the Roman Reigns return makes the most sense if he ruins Seth Rollins' entire plan, which is to take the power and the control back. And, I mean, think about what these guys have done since basically since WrestleMania. I mean, they have been on a tear. Nothing has stopped Seth Rollins, Braun Breaker, and Bronson Reed. It may be temporarily. But now that they now have the Money in the Bank briefcase, like, it's kind of like the tide has to turn at some point. And, like, now is the time for that to turn a little bit. Because that's how you set up the next match, the next big match. And so I think it's got to be where we're headed. Reigns has to cost him. Punk in some way maybe costs him. Sami, like I said, could be involved in this because Jay is attached to it. And then we see where it goes from there. So, all right. I'm going to give you guys, we'll go 2 or 5 minute warning, something like that. We'll probably hop off here in just a bit. But any other questions, comments you have on the show, let me know. Always appreciate you guys hopping on. Like I said, this is probably the most exciting thing we do each month. I like doing these post-PLE reactions. And guess what? We get 2 of them this month as we get Night of Champions coming up in 3 weeks. So we'll do that. That'll be a day show. So if you're in the States, of course, that's a day show. If not, maybe a night show for you as well. But it should be, again, interesting. I think there's a lot more at stake now, knowing that we do have the King and Queen of the Ring. Oh, we didn't mention the Queen of the Ring. We only mentioned the King of the Ring. Sorry. That was a question that was asked on the Queen. I forgot all about it. We got so invested in the King of the Ring that Queen of the Ring, who's going to win? I mean, Jade, I think, is a strong argument to be made for Jade. Who else am I thinking out there? I think Jade is probably the person I would go with at the start. Because, again, we're talking about challenging the brand champion. And if you do Jade versus Tiffany, I think that's an option. I don't think Charlotte winning is an option. You don't want to go back to Charlotte versus Tiffany. It does seem like it was rumored out there. If you guys saw it, it does sound like Jade versus Charlotte could be a match at Evolution. So somehow maybe that ties into something that happens at Night of Champions. Maybe that's your finals. Maybe Jade, I don't know, maybe Jade beats Charlotte, do a rematch or something. It's possible, I suppose, but maybe not. It's a first-time match. You'd want to do that. It's kind of a leader. But, yeah, I think Jade is probably my early favorite for the women's Queen of the Ring on that one. So, yeah, Bianca's still out there too. She's got a tie into the story as well. So, all right, let's get see what else you guys want to talk about. I just completely forgot about Rhea maybe too. Could Rhea win and maybe gets another shot at the title? That's possible. But okay. So I was trying to keep up with it too. So yeah, we've got you're basically going to get 10 to 12 matches. You're right on this, Brandon, on the 2-night SummerSlam. We already got about 6 of them kind of already in the mix, and we didn't mention Jacob and Solo. That's another one on there, right? So. Yep, that's a pretty. I'm all in on that SummerSlam card. If it goes anything close to that right there, if that's kind of your early lineup, count me in. I think that's a tremendous kind of card. So, all right, let's see what else we got right now. Yeah, that's right. Rollins' crew, they're not effing around right now, are they? They're not messing with anybody. They're just going out and calling their business. So, Ryan's gonna do a bold prediction: WrestleMania 42. Seth Rollins is going to face one of his faction members at WrestleMania 42. Yeah, I mean, you've got to feel like the way they're positioning it. The star after this whole run is over, however long it is, the whole star of this is built around Braun Breaker. Like, this is the thing that gets him to the biggest thing of his career. And I think eventually making Braun kind of the Batista coming out of this whole group and just being that top level world time, which Orton was too, I guess you could say, if we're going back to the Evolution comparison. But I think making Breaker the big star, right? Like the guy that just goes on to be the top star potentially in the company, I think it's Braun Breaker. So, yeah, that's it. And look, Mr. L says here too, good point here, I'm going to say, Hell in a Cell. I feel like we may have thrown that around that idea when we initially started talking about this, maybe after like WrestleMania 41, we're like, they're going to have a big stipulation match. It can't just be a normal match, right? It can't just be Reigns versus Rollins again. Come on. We need something bigger than that. Could you do Hell in a Cell? Could that be one of your main events of SummerSlam? Triple H is a guy, as we've seen, he's not the kind of guy in this age, which I appreciate. They scrapped the whole Hell in a Cell, PLE, and pay-per-view or whatever for a reason. You don't just want to have an entire show that builds around the stipulation. The stipulation has to actually mean something. And the last time we saw that, Punk and Drew McIntyre, that thing meant something. If there's another match that equals the idea of needing something like that to finally finish things, Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, absolutely. So I like this idea. I like it. Lorenzo, by the way, is going to say, Sami or LA Knight. I think that's another option too. I would probably rank it right now. Sami Zayn, LA Knight, probably your top 2. But like I said, LA Knight, I'm curious to see where they go with him. This was a big one for him. So, Jacob Fatu, a full-blown babyface now or a tweener? I'm going to say full-blown babyface because, I mean, he's kind of probably presented as a tweener, but when I think about it, I'm like, how can you not cheer this guy? I mean, Solo was hated, although I told you guys, Solo to me is getting more entertaining by the day. And I'm not saying as a world title guy. Solo's mannerisms, he's out there mocking everyone's sort of characteristic. Like, I enjoy this version of Solo better than I enjoyed the Tribal Chief Solo. I just think this one's a little more, I don't know, more Solo-ish, if you can say that. Feels like it's more of his personality. Give me more of this. I'm not saying full comedy Solo, but I like the guy in this sort of role right now. But all right. We're up to 7 matches now, Brandon says. So, yeah, that's fine. So, all right. Let's see. Will Roman get his crew against Seth's crew? So I was trying to do the numbers on this, and I'm thinking Roman Reigns, if we drag this out to Survivor Series, which is, 4 months away, a little over 4 months. I think it's the end of November, right? I think you could do Reigns, Cody, Punk. Who else am I forgetting? Jay, Zayn, maybe? Well, it depends on what happens between now and then. But I'm like, yeah, I think you could see that where, the whole point of building this with Rollins is that you've got people available. And you do still feel like someone else is going to join, right? And so I think that's clearly, if you add another member, which, I know Javion mentioned that too, if you do add another member to the mix, then, yeah, I feel like it's probably something where you're building to a big, multi-man match at some point, and maybe you drag that out to Survivor Series. It feels like it lasts that long. It's going to be Rollins' crew against someone in Survivor Series. It just depends on where we're at with all the baby faces at that point, right? So, yeah, I could see that happening. So, all right, guys, what else you got? We're going to head off here in just a second. May do another video tomorrow with maybe some more thoughts on anything out there coming out of Money in the Bank, kind of heading into this whole thing. By the way, I'm seeing Triple H's comment currently just being just getting a lot of interesting reactions online about R-Truth's return. But nonetheless, that's another story. But yeah, you guys again, give me your final scores for Money in the Bank tonight. I know we kind of went all over the place as we usually do, but your thoughts on the overall show? Did you like it? Thumbs up, thumbs down? What was your overall score? That kind of stuff. I think thumbs up for me. I thought it was a good show. I think got some notable developments coming out of it. Jacob Fatu turn on Solo, Seth winning, Naomi winning, and I think, obviously the R-Truth return, the biggest talking point coming out of this. So, yeah, that's it. So Jaden, by the way, asked if Seth's king of the ring and he doesn't win, then who can, right? So that's the thing. And I said I don't think Rollins needs to be in it, right? Because I think it's like he has the briefcase now. Now, you could say, what happens if Rollins loses? This is a good point here. What happens if Rollins loses the briefcase, loses the cash-in, then manages to get in the king of the ring afterwards, where he could lose it on Monday, gets back into one of the qualifiers before we get there, and then, kind of advances on. That could be a possibility too. What if you do Sami versus Seth as the, potential final of that? Although I wonder with the way they're going to structure it, do you have like one side that's just all Raw guys, and then the other guys, SmackDown? Do you Raw versus SmackDown in the final? It would seem like that's probably a possibility. Or do you just mix everybody together? I told you guys, I'm at the point now where I don't care who's on what brand. Just give me the best show, especially now that you got SmackDown in 3 hours every week, seemingly for the future. Raw's 2.5, closer to 2:45 sometimes. Just give me the best show. I do not care who's on what brand. So I think, yeah, you could do a Sami versus Seth final maybe. If Seth, that's his route back maybe to getting there. Maybe you do a, Breaker Sami again as your final, potentially. I'm going to go with Sami as my top choice right now. But I think it all depends on who else is going to be in that. So, yeah, so we'll see. All right. Got some quickly on the scores here. I'll go back to Brandon's question. Scoring a 10 for the show. 10 out of 10. All right, Michael's going to go 10 out of 10. I thought it was a good show. There was nothing I thought bad on the show. Jaden's going to go C+. On this, Blake, you think Goldberg's last match will be at Great American Bash? I think if you're going to do Goldberg's last match, you probably want to do it in prime time on NBC, and Saturday Night's Main Event to me is the only spot to do that. Something else too, we talk about the TKO era. They did a great television rating for the last Saturday Night's Main Event, which was a pretty stacked lineup when you think about it, right? You had Cena on there, you had Punk on there, you had Jay on there, a lot of your top stars on that show. And so I think you're going to put that on Saturday Night's Main Event. I think that will be, I don't even know if that's like I said, I think you probably want Cena on there too as that, just to give you the biggest thing, but you want to do Goldberg's final match. It's not going to be a 20-minute match or anything and like a, an all-time classic probably. But I think my prediction now is that it's Goldberg versus Gunther, Saturday Night's Main Event. That's the prediction I'll make right now. I think that's likely. Because I still think they're still positioning Great American Bash as an NXT type show based on what they were saying. So, yeah. And that would make sense because NXT is kind of the new... You're the new rival for AEW, is the way WWE has positioned it, which I don't think is always set well with fans these days. I don't love it either because I'm like, you guys know, we only do WWE on the channel. But I've always said, I'm in and out on AEW. I watch sometimes I don't. There were times there where I went a long time without watching, but I've kind of caught up more recently and enjoy it a little bit more these days. But they've kind of positioned NXT as the rival for AEW, and AEW All In, the biggest show of the year, is going to take place that afternoon when Great American Bash is on. So who knows? They're going to try to do whatever they can to counter program. That seems to be the playbook right now. So, all right, guys, there you go. My thoughts on WWE Money in the Bank 2025 and everything else that we talked about here on this show. I do always appreciate you guys jumping in, asking questions, the comments. Like I said, this is more exciting to me than just the normal videos we do on the channel. But we do the videos because, well, that's what you guys enjoy the most. But I always love the sort of long-form live stream reactions that we do here on the channel. So always looking to do more of those. So any ideas, any comments, questions you have, you can drop your comments on any of the videos, of course. You can also, contact me. I'm on Twitter/X. You can find that in the description. Send an email, whatever you want to do. I always appreciate you guys engaging with the channel, and it makes it more fun for me to do more of these. So we're going to keep doing this. We'll start to look at all the possibilities moving forward on Raw and SmackDown. Look ahead to Night of Champions. Also got an idea for kind of a more of an old school type weekly type recurring thing I'm going to do for one of the older eras in WWE. Not that old, though, as you'll see, but I want to go back and look at some of the old shows from a more interesting era, I think, in WWE. We'll talk about that soon when I announce it, but I do always appreciate you guys. Again, if you enjoyed the show tonight, give me a hell yeah in the comments. We always do. Give me a thumbs up. Again, appreciate you supporting the channel. Anything else, drop it in the comments. Let me know anything, predictions, reaction, whatever you have coming out of Money in the Bank. And who knows, if we get the return of Roman Reigns on Monday night, or if we get a big segment coming out of that main event segment on Monday, we may try to go live right afterwards, after Monday's Raw in Phoenix. Sounds like it's going to be a pretty noteworthy show, and we'll see what happens with R-Truth coming out of this as well. So, all right, guys, appreciate you watching as always, and we'll talk to you soon here at Wrestling Reaction.